stand by for the hook's performance, but it should be just a few moments until we complete that hard dock. Again, that's not the end of the docking sequence. After a hard dock, we'll deploy the umbilical between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This provides data and power between the two vehicles. Dragon, up to this point, during its flight after launching on January 18th, has been relying on its batteries and the solar arrays you see on the trunk of the vehicle. That's the black part that you see on the space-facing side, gathering power as it continues to orbit the Earth. Once those umbilicals are deployed, they'll be relying on the station's power, gathering power from the station's solar arrays. Hooks continuing to drive, seeing a good seal on the International Docking Adapter interface. Again, those first set of hooks are continuing to drive. Teams are seeing a good set of first hooks. Those first set of hooks have driven and have closed. Now the second set of hooks are driving. Again, 12 in total. So the first 6 have been secured. The next 6 are driving. That'll complete the hard dock of Dragon to the International Space Station. One more step after that, deploying that umbilical. Again, we have a soft capture of Dragon Freedom to the International Space Station. That was at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. We're now in the hard dock sequence. 12 hooks are used to secure Dragon. The first set of hooks have driven,
Dragon,
and we just heard that second
hard capture is complete.
SpaceX Freedom, we copy.
So 12 hooks, all deployed, all securing Dragon for a hard dock to the International Space Station. One more step to complete the docking sequence, deploying that umbilical. In the meantime, with a hard dock that does secure the Dragon to the International Space Station, they don't have to be as careful with the loads imparting on the inside. Typically during this sequence, they have what's called an exercise constraint, so the astronauts on board station, all 7 of them, are not allowed to exercise during that time, so there's no oscillation, no vibration. They've just lifted that constraint for the crew inside so they can get on with their workout. In the meantime, we're still standing by for the deployment of the umbilical on Dragon to complete the docking sequence.
Houston Station on 2, we are stepping out of Dragon approach monitoring.
Houston copies and concurs.
Welcome to Space Station Axiom 3. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Laura. We're excited to get started.
With all hooks driven, Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli inside the space station are relieved of their monitoring duties, welcoming the crew to the space station. The soft capture ring has been stowed, all 12 hooks are driven, and the umbilical is now deploying. We are almost done with the docking sequence.
And Dragon Freedom, this is SpaceX. Docking sequence is complete, and the ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly. You are go to doff your suits per procedure 4.012, and we'll go ahead and make sure cameras are external.
4.010 work.
And copy Dragon, just to note that's 4.012.
KLE 4.012.
And with that, Dragon Freedom and the Axiom Mission 3 crew inside has formally docked to the International Space Station. The docking sequence is complete. After completing a capture and soft dock at 4:42 a.m. Central Time, all 12 hooks have secured Dragon to the station. The umbilical has been deployed. Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli have been released of their duties. The crew inside is able to exercise. Inside the space station is able to exercise, and the crew inside Dragon is able to doff their suits or take off their suits. The dynamic portion of docking and the safeguard needed for those suits is complete. The Dragon crew, it will now doff their suits and prepare for entering the station in just about approximately an hour and a half. Maybe some change, but we're looking at a hatch opening approximately 6:30 a.m. Central Time. If they stick with the timeline, we'll continue to monitor and provide updates and continue our coverage of the Axiom Mission 3 crew's arrival to the International Space Station, but based on current planning, that is what we are planning for. After hatches are opened, the crew members of Expedition 70 will welcome the Axiom Mission 3 crew to the International Space Station, and the cadre of 11 will gather for a welcome ceremony to begin their 14-day stay, their journey aboard the International Space Station. Again, teams in control rooms on the International Space Station Flight Control Room on the right, and SpaceX Flight Control team on the left in Hawthorne, California, working in tandem to bring the Axiom Mission 3 crew to the International Space Station, docking at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Now, with the docking sequence complete, the crew and the teams will make steps to bring the Axiom Mission 3 crew inside the International Space Station. One of the primary things that will happen over the next hour and a half before the hatches are opened is there is a space in between the Dragon hatch and the International Space Station hatch called the Vestibule, currently at vacuum. We need to bring that up to equalize the pressure between Dragon and the station, about what we find at sea level, 14.7 pounds per square inch. That process will take some time, introducing air and making sure there are no temperature fluctuations and we're getting a good read to make sure there are no leaks as we methodically bring the pressure up from vacuum up to 14.7 psi.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, contact from the cabin mic.
And Dragon SpaceX, we've got you loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Thank you.
We'll hear these periodic check-ins from the crew as they make their way through the process of doffing or taking off their suits and getting ready to open up the hatches, configuring the inside of the Dragon cabin for eventual ingress and welcome into the International Space Station. Cabin mic being
Station
inside
Houston
the
on
Dragon,
the big loop
outside
for
the suit.
Laurel and PMA ingress.
On 2.
Okay, Laurel, we give you a go for 2.102, step 1.1, and step 2.2.
Copy. Go step 1.1 and 2.2.
Good copy.
Alert.
Now, from inside the International Space Station, you're hearing Laurel O'Hara repeating some of the steps on her end after taking on the job of monitoring the spacecraft's approach and docking to the International Space Station. She now moves on to the methodical steps of opening up the hatch and preparing the International Space Station for the entry of new crew members. There are several hatches she'll have to open and areas she'll have to prepare in order to welcome the crew. There are 2 hatches that she'll have to work with. First is the Node 2 forward hatch that has been currently closed through the docking operations. That just allows her and the International Space Station crew access to the pressurized mating adapter. It's really a channel to get us all the way down to what's called the A-pass hatch. This is the hatch that on the other side is that vestibule currently at vacuum. So she'll be opening up those hatches and preparing the pressurized mating adapter. She'll put some covers on some of the hatches just to minimize bumps and hazards along the way so the crew can ingress safely into the International Space Station for hugs and handshakes later. If we stick with the timeline, we're expecting that hatch to open in just about an hour and a half, 6:30 a.m. Central Time, but again, we'll continue to monitor
And Dragon
the crew
SpaceX
through
on
their
the
steps.
big loop, if desired, you can reference your procedure 4.400 for monitoring vestibule pressurization.
Copy 4.400.
It'll be Laurel O'Hara on the station side performing some of the steps for vestibule pressurization, but the crew operations resource engineer in Hawthorne reading up to the Axiom crew inside Dragon, which you see on your screen. They're able to monitor along as well. That vestibule is that important gap in between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch. Right now at vacuum will take quite a bit to bring up to pressurization. 14.7 psi is a slow
With you on 2.
and methodical process.
Station on 2. Node 2 forward hatch is open.
Houston copies.
Wasting no time, Laurel O'Hara has confirmed that from inside the International Space Station, that Node 2 forward hatch is open. Again, that just allows Laurel some access to the pressurized mating adapter. This is the channel way that brings her to the A-pass hatch. Now, that hatch will not be opened until that vestibule is pressurized. So with access to the pressurized mating adapter, she'll be able to work through the steps to start the vestibule pressurization. Again, it's a methodical process, so from vacuum, it's brought up to a checkpoint at 5 pounds per square inch, and is once that pressure is monitored for just a bit and looks stable to make sure there are no initial leaks, they'll go ahead and introduce air into that vestibule to pressurize it to equalize with the International Space Station and Dragon at 14.7 psi. Meanwhile, inside the Dragon, Axiom crew is doffing or taking off their suits. They'll be changing into their garments and setting the Dragon cabin in such a configuration that it is ready for them to ingress the International Space Station. Laurel O'Hara getting a jump start on that vestibule pressurization, already starting some of the initial work, again to bring that vestibule pressure up to 14.7 psi.
Houston Station 1-2, APAS equalization valve closed at 11:06.
Copy, 11:06.
Quick recap, Dragon Freedom and the AX-3 crew have arrived at the International Space Station, docking at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Dragon has been hard docked and the docking sequence is complete. Umbilicals are mated and hooks are driven to secure Dragon to the International Space Station. Crew inside is doffing their suits and preparing for ingressing the International Space Station. It will take some time though. On the other side, on the International Space Station side, Laurel O'Hara is preparing the International Space Station and the vestibule in between the hatches of Dragon and Space Station to bring it up to pressure. She's already opened up the forward hatch on the Node 2. There's
Dragon
also another hatch.
On the big loop, ISS power connection is established and our vestibule leak check is in progress.
SX Freedom, we copy.
So that confirmation confirms that the link enabled by the umbilical between Dragon and International Space Station is providing good power, good data, looks secure. In addition, Laura O'Hara has again opened up that Node 2 forward hatch and has begun the vestibule pressurization. This is a methodical process, so the first step is to bring it up to about 5 pounds per square inch and leave it there as a hold to make sure that it is not leaking. This is the leak check in its methodical process of bringing up to pressure. We're shooting for 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's what will equalize the vestibule between the station and Dragon. Currently enjoying pressures of what typically what we see here at sea level on Earth. Again, that vestibule pressurization leak check is underway. For those just joining, we are continuing our coverage of Axiom Mission 3 crew's arrival to the International Space Station. The teams are methodically working to pressurize the vestibule and open up the hatches to welcome the Axiom crew to the International Space Station. Quick recap, the crew arrived, the Axiom Mission 3 crew arrived at the International Space Station, making contact and soft capture at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. At the time, the Dragon and station were flying together 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. The soft capture ring retracted, bringing the Dragon in towards the International Docking Adapter, and after a good alignment, drove 12 hooks to secure Dragon tightly to the International Space Station for a hard dock. The umbilical was deployed between the Dragon and the International Space Station.
With you on the big loop.
Well, just wondering, with the delay in docking, do you have an update for the time of the events coming up, the joint events?
All right, Mike. Can't give you the best estimate right now. What we recommend is getting with the station crew and talking it over, and let us know when you're ready.
That's perfect, thanks.
Station, we are waiting for your report that the leak check is complete.
Copy, Laurel. We have about 3 minutes left.
This is Mission Control Houston, standing by, monitoring the chatter here and the progress of the vestibule leak checks and the crew's progress of welcoming the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts aboard the International Space Station. We're looking at about another minute.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, just looking for a status on suit doffing and if you've gotten into suit drying yet.
Keely, seats 1 and 4 are out of their seats and out of their suits, and both suits are drying. Seat 3 just egressed his seats and will be doffing here shortly.
All right, copy that, Mike. Thanks.
So, quick status on the crew's progress of opening up those hatches. That communication you just heard was from the crew operations resource engineer in Hawthorne with the mission control teams and with SpaceX in California. We're asking for a status from the Axiom Mission 3 crew. They are partway through their suit doffing, meaning taking off their suits and drying. They hang them out and make sure that the water is released. Making some good progress there. In the meantime, on the space station side here in Houston, monitoring that vestibule leak check. When the vestibule pressure is brought up from vacuum to 5 pounds per square inch, there's a period where the teams allow for temperature fluctuations to dampen in order to have a good leak check. There's a little bit of oscillation, so allowing time to pass and allowing the temperature to sort of equal out allows the team to set a clock for approximately 15 minutes, monitor the pressure inside the vestibule, make sure it is good to go, and then after the 15-minute mark, proceed with bumping that vestibule pressure all the way up to equalize with the International Space Station. Teams working together here in the United States. In Houston, Texas, on the right, International Space Station flight control teams, and NASA's Johnson Space Center monitoring the International Space Station and the pressurization of the vestibule between that spacecraft and Dragon Freedom, welcoming Axiom Mission 3 astronauts to the International Space Station. We're working in tandem with teams over in Hawthorne.
And leak check. Hey, Laurel, leak check is still in work. We're going to need another 10 minutes.
Copy, 10 minutes.
The Capcom here in Houston, William Vu, talking with Laura O'Hara, who is working on the vestibule leak check. It's holding at about 5 pounds per square inch, but we're just taking some time to evaluate and make sure that data is good to go and that there are indeed no leaks as we continue, before we continue with the pressurization of that vestibule up to equalize with the pressure of the International Space Station. Now, as we're waiting for those leak checks and waiting for some good data, again, we're working in tandem with the teams over in Hawthorne, California. The Dragon flight control teams brought the Axiom Mission 3 crew from launch all the way to rendezvous and dock with the International Space Station. Let's check in with the teams over there with Kate and John.
Thanks so much, Gary. Great words there. And it's safe to say now that 37 hours after they lifted off from Kennedy Space Center, the AX-3 crew has arrived at the International Space Station, as you can see there on your screen. I'm sure that they will all be very eager to have that hatch opened in just a little while. In order to get here over the last 37 hours, the Dragon capsule executed a number of burns in order to chase down the International Space Station. From lifting off at Kennedy Space Center and then reaching the station as we see it now. A number of things occurred, including basically those orbital maneuvers in order to get to the station and approach it in a very slow, calm, choreographed manner, as we have seen over the last couple hours. The crew also had the opportunity to tune in with us and do an on-orbit event about only 90 minutes after they took off.
Very quick.
And really, this is just the beginning of their mission. They're going to be here for up to 14 days.
Oh, yeah, and it's going to be a packed mission, Kate. Over the course of the next 14 days, the crew will be heavily focused on payload and research operations. This is the core of their mission. In fact, that's over 230 hours of combined research efforts.
So much.
It is. And what's really cool about it is, we know that payload utilization is such a commodity on station, and this gives an opportunity for research agencies, governments to really get that dedicated time from these crew members. That's really, really important to them. But additionally, crew's also going to be heavily involved in the arts outreach.
And I'm so excited for that.
I am too. I love that aspect of spaceflight. It's an essential part of human spaceflight and expeditions, and I'm really excited about it. And in addition, a lot of public outreach and engagement, because after all, as we've mentioned, this is Turkey's first flight. So this is going to be a packed mission for the crew. It's going to be an exciting mission for the crew. There's tons of research that's going to be going on over the next two weeks on ISS. And really, this is the goal of ultimately these private astronaut missions, right?
Yeah.
Commercializing space. You need this kind of energy put into a very short period of time.
That is true.
Very exciting.
You mentioned energy, and they're going to need a lot of it because, they are up at the International Space Station, as you mentioned earlier in the webcast.
Freedom, Houston on the big loop. Stand by for hardline audio config.
All right, so the folks on board station are continuing to work with the teams in Houston and here in Hawthorne in order to finish the final preparations, both Dragon and on station, for the opening of the hatch. But we were talking about all the work that they're going to have to do, and they're going to need a lot of energy to get through the next 2 weeks because they are up on orbit now. And it's going to be very busy.
Yeah.
Not only do they have scheduled sleep periods and scheduled meal periods and all that science, they're also going to want to, take an opportunity to sit in the cupola. Actually, in the launch broadcast, there were some very cool words from the AX-2 pilot, John Schaffner, and he said, sit in the cupola as much as you possibly can.
Yes. And how could you not, with views like that, how could you not want to take in as much of that as you can, right? And also, while they're up there, they're going to be wanting to take in as much as they can from these other crew members.
Absolutely.
Right? We have 2 Dragons on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a packed ISS.
Yes.
And they're going to want to get as much as they can and take that back home and talk to their nations about that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, talking about that crew, while we're waiting for Dragon and the AX-3 crew to actually go through the hatch and meet the rest of the ISS crew, let's go ahead and meet this AX-3 crew. The commander of our flight today, Michael Lopez Alegria, or MLA, is no stranger to Axiom missions, Dragon, or the space station. In fact, AX-3 marks his 6th mission to space, having completed 3 space shuttle flights and a Soyuz mission as a NASA astronaut prior to commanding AX-1 with Axiom Space. And today, when not in low Earth orbit, or docked to the to the ISS. MLA serves as Axiom Space's chief astronaut.
Our pilot on today's flight, Colonel Walter Villade from the Italian Air Force, has taken his inaugural trip to low Earth orbit. Villade currently serves in the Italian Air Force and as the head of the Italian Air Force's representative office in the United States. He has completed cosmonaut training as a space engineer, participated in multiple analog training missions, and flown a variety of aircraft and missions as an active flight engineer in the Italian Air Force.
Our third crew member for today's mission is Mission Specialist Alper Izirace. Alper is the first Turkish astronaut to go to space. With 15 years of experience across a myriad of aircraft for the Turkish Air Force, Izirace got his start in the Air Force Academy in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned a master's degree from the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. He then flew as a commercial airline captain for a number of years before returning to duty in the Turkish Air Force.
And finally, our mission specialist, Marcus Want, a lieutenant colonel in the Swedish Air Force. In November of 2022, Marcus was selected by the European Space Agency as an astronaut reserve. However, with the AX-3 mission, he now becomes the first project astronaut in ESA's history. This is a new designation within their ranks. So as you can tell, this is an incredible crew. They have years of experience and they are well prepared. They have trained quite a bit in order to execute the AX-3 mission, not only on Dragon systems and space station systems, but also, just all the procedures that they have to work through and all the science that they're going to have to do.
Yeah, no, I think the word you hit on there, Kate, for me definitely is prepared. This crew, both individually and as a team, are so prepared for this mission. They have gone through years, collective years together, individually, but then as a team to train for this. And this is the first all-European crew. This is a huge first for spaceflight. They're representing 5 nations across the 4 of them. And missions like this really are critical for that future sustained low Earth orbit commercialization of spaceflight that we talk about. And this is one of those steps on that path.
Yeah. So we have a great view here of the Dragon capsule, and you might have noticed that our views go in and out due to ground station coverage. We don't have views the entire time, so we show them when we have them. And this view here is just breathtaking. It is a live view from the International Station of Dragon Freedom, which has now successfully docked with the International Space Station. We had confirmation of docking complete at 2:56 a.m. Pacific time. And here you can see an animation of the pressurized section, which is the top half, as well as the unpressurized section, which is the bottom half or the trunk. Some dimensions there. You can kind of get a feel for how big it is. The solar arrays there, which is the black side of the trunk, those help to collect energy from the sun, which gets converted into a power source for the Dragon capsule while it is on orbit, both while it is at the station as well as when it is approaching and as well as after it has undocked. So yeah, beautiful view. If you were watching our coverage earlier, there was a really cool moment, which we might actually get the reverse of it here coming up soon, but there was a very cool moment where I believe it was when Gary was walking us through some activity, and we were not able to see the capsule we weren't able to see Dragon at all. And then all of a sudden there was just a little bit of light, and it did a great job of illustrating just how quickly the space station is orbiting the Earth. It's going 17,500 miles per hour, and you complete an orbit every 90 minutes. And it's hard to fathom what that feels like, but the moment where this Dragon capsule went from being completely dark to just a sliver of light to fully lit like it is here. It was a very cool moment.
Like you blink and you miss it.
Yeah.
But you're right, it was pitch black, and then the sun started rising on it, right? It had that image of it, and then suddenly it was there.
Yeah,
it was gorgeous.
Very cool. Now, we mentioned that the crew has spent, I guess at this point it's almost like 37 and a half hours, but in that time they have completed 25 orbits. So they did have some downtime, fortunately, whenever they were on orbit during this journey, and I'm sure that they were taking lots of pictures. And I've said it before, if I were in the spacecraft, I would probably just have my face plastered to the window. Somebody would have to fight me for
for that seat,
for access. Yeah. And yeah, so they've completed 90 orbits, and I'm sure during that time they've taken in as many views as they possibly can.
Oh, exactly. And they're going to take in so many more, right? The next step that this crew is looking forward to is opening that hatch. Yeah. That is such a pivotal moment for any crew, right? To get into the space station and get into the ISS and go meet their crew members that they're going to be spending their time with. It is what the International Space Station represents. It's what it's for. And they had so much to do on this 37 and a half hours, multiple orbits trip up there. But the next step really is crossing that hatch, meeting their coworkers for the next 2 weeks, meeting their friends, their neighbors, and getting to experience all of that in a much bigger atmosphere now. They spent that time in the vehicle. It's about to get a lot bigger, and they're going to get to go into the cupola and see that view that we talked about. They're going to get to experience living and working and all of the nuanced difficulties that come with that in low Earth orbit, and it's going to be a really beautiful moment. And that's really the next step that we're working towards, is getting to open that hatch. And as Gary mentioned, it takes time for that to happen. There's a lot of timelined events that work up to once the vehicle is on orbit. Now the crew that's on the ISS has to do a lot of preparation work in order to open that hatch and get that Dragon crew across.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We're working towards that moment now.
And most of all the physical work for those preparations are being done by the crew on board station right now. But there is also a lot of work being done by the crews here at SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California, as well as ISS Mission Control in Houston. So there's a lot of integrated operations happening here. Actually, great view here, as we have seen a couple of times, of both of those control rooms. SpaceX Mission Control on the left, Houston Mission Control there on the right. And a lot of integrated activities. If you've been following along, you've heard either SpaceX Core, which is the Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, or NASA's Capcom, which is
Freedom Houston on the big loop. Hardline audio config is complete. How do you hear?
Yeah, Kate, almost perfectly you mentioned Capcom there, right? But one of the things that we're really working towards...
Houston Freedom, we hear you loud and clear.
We have you loud and clear as well.
So that right there, just literally working through the procedures.
Freedom Houston, can you try again on the big loop?
Right now, trying to establish the communication on the big loop, which is everyone all together. The big loop is exactly as it sounds. It's Houston, it's the International Space Station, it's SpaceX, it's
Houston
Dragon.
Freedom on the big loop, com check.
Loud and clear.
Happy to say.
All right, well, as we know, comm checks are an essential tool, an essential part of this effort, this joint effort that we have. And what the point that we're working towards at this moment is opening that hatch, and that'll ultimately culminate in a crew meeting ceremony, a crew welcome ceremony, where the AX-3 crew gets to meet their ISS crew. And so with that, we will toss it back over to Gary with Mission Control in Houston.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kate. Yes, we are monitoring the operations here in Mission Control Houston. Main thing we're looking forward to is that vestibule pressurization, but you just heard that hardline comm checks. That was that umbilical that was mated between the Dragon and the International Space Station, providing power, no longer having to rely on the batteries and the solar arrays you see on the back end of Dragon from this view as the sun sets, and the International Space Station and Dragon orbit over northern China into an orbital darkness. But that hardline communication looking good. The vestibule pressurization is also looking good. Laurel O'Hara working through the steps to go ahead and equalize that pressure between the vestibule. Now there's a couple of steps. First, of course, is equalizing that pressure and making sure that the pressure between the Dragon hatch and station hatch equalizes with that inside both of those vehicles. We're looking for about what we find at sea level, 14.7 psi. Now, just as we did when we were pressurizing the vestibule before, we're going to wait a little bit when we bring it up to pressure just to do what's called a thermal relaxation. When the pressure is brought up, there are these natural swings that occur due to the temperature inside of the vestibule, which has been exposed to vacuum up until the point of contact and capture from the Dragon. So we'll just allow a couple of minutes for that to relax and just be absolutely sure that we have a good pressurization and that we have no leaks indeed. We did again perform that leak check and everything looked good, which is why we are proceeding with these steps. But another caution before that APAS hatch is opened. Now, once that hatch is opened, Laurel O'Hara's job is not done. It's not just opening up the hatch and then opening up the Dragon hatch. The APAS hatch itself is outfitted with what's called a docking target cross. Now, this was the cross that you may have seen when Dragon was approaching the International Space Station. It's just really this target that allows for the guidance and navigation control equipment inside Dragon to lock on very precisely to the APAS hatch and go in for a docking. Now that is a removable part of the APAS hatch and part of the outfitting procedures. So Laurel O'Hara will go ahead and take that cross off and then cover the APAS hatch just as a protective measure. Make sure no one's bumping their heads on the way in, as it can be a tight squeeze to go in between the Dragon and APAS hatches and through the pressurized mating adapter. She'll outfit the hatch, taking off the cross, putting on a cover, and then she'll also route some ducts through the pressurized mating adapter that will blow some fresh cabin air from inside the International Space Station to that vestibule. Interesting thing that happens in microgravity is when air is not actively circulating in the pressurized mating adapter, which often that node 2 forward hatch is closed, sometimes there can be these interesting pockets of carbon dioxide. So this will flow some fresh air, make sure the temperature and make sure that air is well mixed and the temperature is good, and allow a very comfortable, safe, and cushy float into the International Space Station for that Axiom Mission 3 crew. So again, Laurel O'Hara, just to recap, is continuing with the pressurization of that APAS hatch, making sure that everything is good for the Axiom Mission 3 crew. Of course, it is not just Mission Control Houston and Mission Control Hawthorne, California. Right down the road from here in Mission Control Houston is MCCA, Mission Control Axiom, who are going to be monitoring, who have been monitoring the crew throughout this journey and will continue to work in tandem with the International Space Station flight control teams here in Houston through many of the activities they have scheduled for their long stay aboard. Long meaning just about 2 weeks. We can expect them to do some of the things that John was talking about, some science activities, many outreach activities, lots planned for the private astronauts who are going to be spending their days aboard the station and maximize every day and the opportunities they have while on board the orbiting complex. Again, we're standing by. We're following along on the pressurization procedures between the International Space Station and Dragon. The Axiom Mission 3 astronauts docked aboard Dragon Freedom to the International Space Station at 4:42 a.m. Central Time, just a little more than an hour ago at this point. After that soft capture, they went through the sequence of the docking sequence, which includes a hard dock and the 12 latches that secure Dragon to the International Space Station, mating umbilicals, stowing the soft capture ring, and ensuring that Dragon is secured to the International Space Station. Now the teams are working in tandem to bring that pressurization, the space in between those two hatches, those two vehicles, up to equalize so they can start opening up the hatches and welcome the crew. Now, it's been a long day for the crew, so we can expect, based on the timeline that we're seeing, hatches to open in perhaps about 40 minutes, and a welcome event to happen shortly after that. We'll follow the operations just to see exactly when those times occur.
APAS hatches open, no condensation.
Houston copies.
That was confirmation from Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli. The two of them were tasked with monitoring Dragon's approach and docking to the International Space Station. Laurel O'Hara has been mostly at work, but of course Jasmine Mogbelli not far behind. Two of them working to, like I said, pressurize that vestibule, which we just heard has been pressurized and equalized, and that APAS hatch, this is the hatch on the International Space Station side, that is now open. So with that APAS hatch open, the ISS crew can go through the steps to outfit the hatch before they open up the Dragon hatch. Now, we've been checking in with the Dragon crew, the Axiom Mission 3 crew, periodically. They've been working through the steps to doff their suits and prepare for eventual ingress while the International Space Station crew goes through these procedures. But just to review once again, once the APAS hatch is open, there's a bit more steps to go. There's a couple of steps to outfit the APAS hatch itself, including taking off the docking target cross, which was used as part of the rendezvous approach and docking procedures that allowed targeting from the Dragon spacecraft to accurately dock to the International Space Station. It sticks out a bit, so that'll be removed just as a safety measure, as well as covering the APAS hatch. The APAS hatch is made of metal, so of course the covering the hatch will be another safety measure just to ensure when the Axiom Mission 3 crew ingresses, in case they do bump their head, it won't be as much of an issue. So those safety measures and just making sure that the pressurized mating adapter itself is nice and clear. Now, in addition to outfitting the hatch, they will also ensure that air is circulating properly in this vestibule, which has been closed primarily, and now especially the vestibule has been exposed to vacuum up until the point of docking. So Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli will route some air ducts down into the pressurized mating adapter and blow some fresh cabin air from inside the International Space Station to circulate, get some of those pockets and circulate fresh air, equalize the temperature, and make sure that they are ready to welcome that crew.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, looking for a status on 4.012 and also 4.400.
Okay, SpaceX, let's start with 4.400. We're in section 5, flushing the urine hose. We'll have a consumables report here in just a minute.
Copy that in section 5, and consumables report coming shortly.
That's a good copy.
You'll notice as part of these joint operations, crew operations, resource engineer checking in with the Dragon crew.
4.012 in section 3. Comfort garments for seats 1, 3, and 4 will be trashed. Mine were trashed after launch. And all 4 suits are disinfected and being dried in various stages.
All right, copy Dragon. So comfort garments for 1, 3, and 4 will be trashed, and all suits are drying.
Copy. SpaceX Freedom, would you like that inventory report on the big loop or on Dragon to ground?
And Dragon, you can go ahead and bring that to Dragon to ground.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground.
And Dragon, I've got you loud and clear.
Back to in 4.400 section 3, and when it comes to bottles consumed, water bottles, we have consumed a total of 19 bottles. So all bottles in bag 201, all bottles in 202, all bottles in 204, and we have consumed 4 bottles from 203.
All right, copy Dragon, 19 bottles, all in 201, 202, 204, and 4 consumed from 203.
And meals consumed are all meals from 301, all from 302, all from 304, and 2 from 303.
Copy Dragon, all meals in 301, 302, 304, and 2 from 303. Thank you.
That's a good readback from Dragon.
So a quick recap, we're continuing to work through the procedures of preparing the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts' ingress into the International Space Station and welcome by the Expedition 70 crew. Activities happening on both ends of the hatches. We just heard a status report from the crew inside Dragon Freedom, talking about their consumables and getting the Dragon capsule itself ready for its 2-week stay aboard the International Space Station.
SpaceX Freedom back on
From
the big
left to
loop.
right.
We're now in section 6 of 4.400, ready to equalize.
And Dragon, copy, you are in section 6 of 4.400. The ISS crew has opened the APAS hatch and are working through docking target uninstall, so we'll get back to you shortly on when we're proceeding to hatch open.
Okay.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, looking to see if we are good to come back on board with video.
Give us a few minutes. I'll call you back.
Copy that.
Houston Dragon Station on Space Room 2. Station is ready for Dragon Hatch equalization.
Houston copies, standby.
And Freedom is ready as well.
Now getting views from the inside of the International Space Station. You can see some of the work that's been done before the crew was able to set up some of the cameras. Laura O'Hara, there on the right, she's been the one working through the hatch opening procedures, and she was working on the docking procedures as well. Commander of the International Space Station in the background there, Andreas Mogensen. In the foreground, Jasmine Mogbelli, NASA astronaut, has been working in tandem with Laura O'Hara to monitor Dragon's arrival and the Axiom Mission 3 crew, as well as through the hatch opening steps. So again, Laura O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli have methodically worked to opening up the hatches you see in the background there. So right in the back, that is the pressurized mating adapter. You can see on the forward end, right behind Andreas Mogensen, is the Node 2 forward hatch that is open and stowed at the top portion of your screen. And then deep in the pressurized mating adapter is the APAS hatch, which has been outfitted for the Axiom Mission 3 crew's arrival. Docking target has been removed, covers have been added, and ducts have been brought in to circulate air, and you can see at this point have already been pulled out. So the area within the pressurized mating adapter and vestibule has been equalized with the pressure of the International Space Station. The next step really is opening up the Dragon hatch. So the teams are just assessing just to make sure that that is okay to do, but you can see crews gathering right now. They got their cameras ready, smiles, and ready to welcome the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts to the International Space Station. Coming into frame is Satoshi Furukawa. Heading left from this view into the Japanese experiment module. Furukawa with high-definition microphone in tow will start to equip it and will be used as part of the welcome ceremony. We can expect the full Expedition 70 crew to be there to greet the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts. See hugs and handshakes as they ingress. By the time we have all 4 Axiom crew members on board the station population will be up to 11.
Station and Freedom, Houston on the Big Loop. Stand by for equalization, expected to take 3 minutes.
Freedom copies.
Michael Lopez Alegria, the commander of Dragon Freedom for the Axiom Mission 3 mission, confirming that he'll start working through the steps to equalize the pressure and to open up the hatch of Dragon Freedom. We should be expecting ingress momentarily. In the meantime, we have more members of Expedition 70 gathering to welcome the crew. On the right there, you see Konstantin Borisov, who flew up with the Crew 7 cadre to the International Space Station. Again, two control rooms working in tandem through these operations. The Expedition 70 crew standing by, awaiting for equalization to go ahead and open up the hatch of Dragon. Should be expecting hatch open momentarily to welcome the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts to the International Space Station. Team's just ensuring the equalization is good before going ahead to open up the hatch, but we should be expecting that momentarily. International Space Station Commander Andreas Mogensen heading towards the hatch. On the right, Oleg Kononenko, another Roscosmos cosmonaut, and Nikolai Chub. Expedition 70 now rounded out.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. You have a go for hatch opening per your decal, followed by the remaining actions in procedure 4.400 section 6, and confirming if we are good to come back on board with cameras.
SpaceX Freedom, copy, standby 1.
Again, the 7 members of Expedition 70 gathered in Node 2. In the background there is the forward end of the International Space Station. At the end of the pressurized mating adapter is Dragon Freedom and the Axiom Mission 3 crew members.
SpaceX Freedom, you may come on board and we're opening the hatch.
Copy that, Freedom.
SpaceX in Houston on the big loop, the Dragon forward hatch is open.
SpaceX copies.
6:13 a.m. Central Time. Dragon hatch is open. Jasmine Mogbelli in the background there with the still camera. Way down in the pressurized mating adapter is Andreas Mogensen, International Space Station Commander, working with the Dragon crew to open up the Dragon hatch, and we should be seeing some of the private astronaut mission crew members.
Freedom on the big loop. We are complete with 4-400 entering ISS.
Copy that, Freedom. Welcome aboard.
Coming together first through the hatches, Marcus Want and Alper Gezerauchi of Sweden and Turkey, respectively, being greeted by the crew of Expedition 70. The two are followed by Walter Villaday, pilot of the Dragon Freedom. Last coming into the International Space Station, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria. "11 crew members representing 7 nations now on board the International Space Station. Again, 11 crew members on board the International Space Station now, representing Expedition 70 and the Axiom Mission 3 crew. We're now in a short handover period. We should be regaining the video and audio from the International Space Station momentarily to celebrate with the crew the welcome of Axiom Mission 3 to the International Space Station. With the crew now on board the International Space Station, all hatches open between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. Once we regain video from the International Space Station, we should be preparing for setting up a welcome ceremony. All 11 crew members will gather for some remarks to commemorate this moment. Back on board the International Space Station, again, Expedition 70 gathered with the Axiom Mission 3 crew, all chatting ahead and having some initial remarks amongst each other before we begin that formal welcome ceremony.
station up to.
With you on 2.
We'll go on time for the event, so at 35.
We copy.
So the crew of Expedition 70 and, again, Axiom Mission 3 astronauts on board the International Space Station confirming they have a set block of time for starting this welcome ceremony, and they will take it. Right now, 6:20 a.m. We should be starting that welcome ceremony in 15 minutes.
Station Houston on 2. We're standing by for scene and voice.
Copy, I just need to change the batteries. Just a second.
We copy.
Multinational crew currently gathered in Node 2 ahead of the welcome ceremony. We're expecting that to start at 6:35 a.m. Central Time. Jasmine Moghbeli, a NASA astronaut in the foreground, speaking with Oleg Kononenko, Roscosmos cosmonaut. To his right is Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov, speaking with Walter Villiday of Italy, and the pilot of Dragon Freedom for Axiom Mission 3. Expedition 70 member Nikolai Chub coming into frame behind Moghbeli.
Freedom Crew, Houston on the big loop. Just a friendly reminder, we need for you to complete step 6 and 2.102 prior to the event.
Yeah, Houston, this is Freedom on the big loop. We are complete with 6.1. Your go for IMV fan activation.
Copy, we'll get it in work. Station, we are ready for the voice check. Thanks, Andy. We can use another 10 count, please. Good scene and voice check.
As is typical with in-flight events aboard the International Space Station, conducting a scene and voice check, and we're seeing more members of Expedition 70 gather ahead of the welcome ceremony. Of course, we still have Commander of Axiom Mission 3, Michael Lopez Alegria, and the mission specialists that were aboard Dragon Freedom, Alper Gezerauchi, and Marcus Want. In frame here, we have pilot Walter Villade of Italy. To his right, to our right, his left, commander of Expedition 70 aboard the International Space Station, Andreas Mogensen of Denmark. Going right from there is Konstantin Borisov and Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos. Continuing around the circle, Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli of NASA, and on the left, Nikolai Chu.
Freedom crew, Houston on the big loop. You have a go for 2.102, steps 6.2 and 6.3.
6.2 and 6.3 in work.
And to clarify, Freedom, you have a go to complete the rest of step 6.
Again, we're tracking towards the welcome ceremony of all 11 crew members on board the International Space Station, starting at 6:35 a.m. Central Time. This is really the middle of the day for the Expedition 70 crew members and Axiom Mission 3 crew members. Right after the welcome ceremony, their day is not quite done. All crew members will participate in an initial International Space Station safety briefing, just to ensure they're up to date with the latest information and the freshest information as they proceed about the rest of their day. Some of the crew members will then enjoy a lunch, while the remaining crew members are briefed by the International Space Station Expedition 70 Commander Andreas Mogensen, who will brief the private astronauts who have just been welcomed on board the International Space Station Axiom Mission 3. Astronauts will get a briefing from the commander. Afterwards, the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts will proceed with cargo unloading and some initial experiment and equipment setup before the end of their day. Tomorrow, Sunday, is a relatively light day for the Expedition 70 and private astronaut crew members, continuing with some cargo transfer ops, but setting up some initial experiments and enjoying a lighter day before they really hit the ground running for their first week aboard the International Space Station. Axiom Mission 3 is expected to be a 14-day mission. Right now we're targeting approximately February 3rd, pending weather, for the undock opportunity for the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts to leave the International Space Station and splash down off the coast of Florida. But of course, starting Monday, we'll begin a myriad of scientific and education activities for them to complete. All this work has been timelined in months in advance to coordinate the schedules of 11 crew members on board the International Space Station to ensure there is a seamless transition of using different scientific experiments and facilities, and that 11 crew members can get an incredible amount of science and discovery done in a short amount of time.
SpaceX in Houston from Freedom on the Big Loop. We're complete through step 8 of Q.102.
Houston copies.
And SpaceX copies.
Axiom Mission 3 crew member and mission specialist aboard Dragon, Marcus Want, coming into frame. We'll start seeing all 11 crew members come into frame as they close out some of their activities. We're expecting to begin the welcome ceremony on time in just about 3 minutes.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. We are 2 minutes out from the event. Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready for the event.
Please begin the welcome ceremony. Andy, Houston on 2, can you check the mic, please?
On behalf of the Expedition 70 crew, I'd like to welcome Axiom 3 on board the International Space Station. This is an incredibly exciting time for human spaceflight with the third private mission, which is allowing many more countries to participate in the scientific research and technology development that we do on board this orbiting laboratory. We have doubled the number of nationalities on board the space station, going from 4 to 8, which I think is a great testament to the international collaboration which underpins this marvelous space station. I'm also very proud as a European to welcome 4 other Europeans. I think this is the first time in the history of the space station that we have 5 Europeans on board at the same time. And certainly it's the first time that we have 2 Scandinavians on board. So I'm very happy to welcome my fellow Scandinavian, Marcus. But we look forward to the next 2 weeks, to an intense period of work on board the space station. So a big warm welcome to Axiom 3 from us on board the space station.
Thanks, Andy. I think you said it very well. This is really a symbol of how Axiom, in conjunction with NASA and all the partners, is working to expand human access to low Earth orbit. And we've got, as Andy said, so many nationalities represented on board, and this is really symbolic of what we're trying to do to open it up not only to other nations, also to individuals, to researchers, to continue the great work that's been going on board the ISS for the last 2 decades plus. The ride uphill was pretty exciting. Never gets old. I think we probably spent a few more hours in Dragon than we felt like we needed to, but it was all good. Great vehicle. Thanks to you at SpaceX for putting that thing together for us and for such smooth operation. Let me pass the microphone down to my crewmates just for a couple words, and then I'd like to get it back at the very end, if that's okay. Walter?
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I want to, first of all, thank the expedition crew for this warm welcoming. It's amazing to be up here and to see how much really all the countries and this amazing international collaboration has made in space, creating this outpost. And I'm very grateful for Italy, and just a few words in Italian. So thank you, grazie e grazie a tutta l'Italia. Vorrei ringraziare non solo l'aeronautica militare ma anche tutte le istituzioni che hanno portato qui questa missione in questo straordinario contesto di collaborazione internazionale in cui abbiamo portato scienza, e per 2 settimane saremo qui a collaborare e lavorare con questo equipaggio internazionale straordinario. Grazie mille, and now I hand over to my colleagues and friend Alper from Turkey.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank first for your kind hospitality to Expedition 7 crew over here. They were waiting for us at the door, actually, so that was a very nice, kind welcoming for us. I would like to thank for everybody for their great effort for us to be able to make it over here in the last 8 months training period, as well as all the counterparts for their contribution for our safe travel to make it over to ISS. We are happy as Turkey to step for the first time in our history, and looking forward to contribute into the science and research efforts over here. And I would like to say a couple words to my country. Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'ni kurarak bizlere emanet eden Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk ve silah arkadaşlarına, bu vatan için canını veren tüm şehitlerimize, buraya adım atmamızı sağlayan güçlü iradesiyle devletimize ve bu imkanları bize sağlayan milletimize şükranlarımı sunuyorum. İstikbal göklerdedir. Now I would like to pass over the microphone to my dear friend, Marcus Wandt from Sweden, representing here ESA.
Thank you, Alper. I also want to say first a big thank you to Expedition 70 for greeting us and knocking on our door in the middle of everything. It was pretty amazing. Been flying around and orbiting Earth for 36 hours or so, and then someone knocks on the door. That's pretty strange. And also, I want to say that having this many nationalities on a mission like this, and it just tells me that collaboration can take you very far. Entering the hatch here and meeting other people in space from so many different cultures and places around the world just give me a strong sense of future, which is awesome. I also want to say a few words in Swedish to Sweden. Så hej allihopa där hemma. Det här är förstås en fantastisk känsla. Uppskjutningen var en resa, jag har aldrig varit med om något liknande förut. Och sen att få se jorden från ovan och sväva runt och känna att Sverige på ett så kraftfullt och beslutsamt sätt valde att ställa sig långt fram i utvecklingen igen, vilket vi ofta gör, och fortsätter vara ett innovationsland och visa andra att gott samarbete fungerar. För vi har också här pionerat det nya sättet för Europa att ta sig upp och öka frekvensen i rymdutforskningen på ett sätt som vi inte har sett förut. Så otroligt stolt att få representera Sverige och Europa här uppe. All right, thank you. Mike.
So now I'd like to continue a bit of a tradition that we've started, and that is to award the Universal Astronaut symbol pin, if I don't lose it, to each of these steely-eyed aviators. I think it's telling that these will be the 7th, 8th, and 9th people that Axiom has provided pins. In fact, since we started flying in 2022, no agency has pinned more new astronauts. And again, this is symbolic of us trying to open up the access to low Earth orbit to more and more people. So first of all, Colonel Walter Villadé, it is my pleasure to... No, I'm going to put it on you.
Oh, right. Okay.
You'll be number 609.
Wow. That's a privilege, Mike. Thank you so much. Let me see if I can stabilize myself without messing.
If you guys can, if you can slide down and have these guys slide here. Right. Thank you. This is a real pleasure to award this pin to the first Turkish astronaut in history. I don't think I need to say anything more. Alper. Can you hold the microphone?
Yep.
Uh-oh. I actually broke it. There we go. And finally, Marcus. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mike.
I failed to mention Alper obviously is number 610 and Marcus is 611. And finally, I want to thank all of you guys again for welcoming us aboard. I know that it's tough to have guests in your house, and we promise not to spill any red wine on your white carpet. Thank you, Andy.
Once again, welcome, and we look forward to working with you for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be an incredible mission, and we're excited to have guests.
Thank you to all participants, and welcome aboard Axiom 3 station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.
All right, 11 astronauts on board the International Space Station working together for science and discovery. It's going to be a very busy and jam-packed couple of weeks with a full space station, but certainly nothing that can't be handled. This will be the third time we have a private astronaut crew on board the International Space Station, the third time we have 11 astronauts as part of this mix as complement of private and government astronauts, and of course the private astronauts representing their own governments, expanding nations to 7 nations right now on board station, conducting science for the benefit, really, of the world. For that, really, that will conclude our coverage here in Mission Control Houston. Before, of course, the expedition crew and the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts, really the journey has just begun. So that'll wrap it up here in Houston. I'll toss it over to Kate for some closing words from Hawthorne.
Thanks so much, Gary. It really was so wonderful to see them all together. Some really nice words there from our commander, MLA. But on that note, we're going to wrap up our live joint coverage of AX-3's arrival to the International Space Station. It's been an honor to support the Axiom 3 mission thus far. We wish Marcus, Alper, Walter, and MLA a successful time on station, and we look forward to joining you when it's time to return home.
Yeah, Kate, from launch to docking, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this desk with you again, so thank you. Over the course of the crew's time on station, we will be producing mission updates from Axiom's Space Station Development Facility, with Commander Lopez Alegria sharing highlights and special moments with Walter, Alper, and Marcus. So please be sure to visit axiomspace.com and follow the Axiom social media channels for real-time updates.
And with that, on behalf of SpaceX, Axiom Space, and NASA, thank you all for tuning in to watch from wherever you're watching from. With that, good morning, good evening, or good night.